Good afternoon to everyone here on the East Coast and Central Time, and good morning to our folks around the rest of the country and possibly around the world. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us for another XenTegra webinar. We will be getting started here in just a few minutes. I see people popping into the webinar now, so we want to give everyone just a few minutes to get into the room, and then we'll kick off. Hope everyone's having a good day. I need a quick mic check. Can other folks hear me? I've got one message that can't
I
be
can
heard.
hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you, Philip.
Good. All right. So we'll kick off here in just a couple minutes. All right. Well, once again, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm excited to talk about EUC and EUC Reimagined. So thanks for taking a little bit of time with us. I'm Phil Sellers. We'll take a minute for quick introductions here. Maybe get the slides working. So good afternoon, good morning, good day. I'm Phil Sellers. I am a practice director here at XenTegra. I get the distinct honor of running two practices, the Modern Workspaces practice, which encompasses Citrix, and also the Modern Data Center practice, which encompasses our Nutanix relationship as well. So I'm joined today with Paul Nguyen. Paul, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon on the East Coast and good morning on the West. My name is Paul Nguyen, Senior Channel SC with Nutanix. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk EUC with everyone.
Yeah, so Paul is my right-hand man. Paul and I have been working together for about 18 months and trying to bring good things to the XenTegra customers in terms of the Nutanix technology, what you can do. And today's one of those great opportunities to kind of look at and think about what's possible, right? When you pair two of our great technologies together, this is one of those stories where we really feel like it's a better together story. And so we want to be able to highlight that, talk about the unique points of integration, and see how you may be able to make that work within your organization. So just for showing up today, you are automatically entered to win one of two solo stoves as a thank you from XenTegra and Nutanix. So we're going to do that drawing at the end, and we'll notify the winners of the solo stoves after the webinar is finished for today. So we appreciate you being here. And not only is that one giveaway, we've got two today. So if you're willing to take a meeting with us, you can sign up below. Let's do the little, there should be a link below. If you're willing to take a meeting with us, we'll also give you a Nutanix quarter zip. So the form is linked below. Chase has also put it here in our chat. So you can sign up and get one of those quarter zips. They're very, very warm right now in the middle of the winter. That could be handy. And it's Nutanix branded along with the XenTegra logo. So a little thank you for taking a meeting with us where we can talk more about this in depth with your requirements, with the specifics of your environment in mind, and tailor the conversation to whatever your business may need. So as we get started on this quick webinar, I know most of the names I saw look like our customers, but just in case for a few people on the webinar today, who is XenTegra? Well, we hope to be a different kind of value-added reseller. We focus in the end-user compute and cloud computing spaces. That's where our expertise is strong. We were founded by a former Citrix solutions engineer, and he thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so we approach that with a different mentality than some of our competitors. We try to bring extra value. And so we'll talk a little bit about the value adds that we bring that are available to you just by working with us. But in addition to being a value-added reseller, we also do consulting services and managed services. And so there is a number of ways that you can engage with us and work with us. But one of the easiest ways that you can engage and work with us is some of our complimentary assessments. So we've got 12 or 13, I believe, complimentary assessments today, covering a number of our focus technologies like Nutanix, like Citrix, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. We can come in and spend 4 hours with you and your team, and it's absolutely free, and look at different aspects of your environment. How are you doing compared to best practices? How does your security configuration look? What improvements could help you with performance or overall outcomes with the products that you've got deployed in your environment? So it's a great way to get to know us and our team and our capabilities at no cost to you. So as I said, when Andy, our founder, decided to found or create XenTegra, it was really out of the need for true customer enablement and partnership. So we take that very seriously. We want to be able to be that partner, that trusted voice in your environment to help you succeed. So at XenTegra, because we focus on EUC, we also truly believe that work has no boundaries. And so this year we're giving away a dream vacation. This is a way that we can give back to our community, but it's pretty easy to get started. If you take a meeting with us, same meeting that you take for the quarter zip, you can also get qualified for the Hawaiian giveaway. You can register for that at the link in the chat, or you can go to workhasnoboundaries.com. All the details for the giveaway are there, but this is a great way that we're giving back to our customers. We're allowed, and you can find all the terms and conditions on that website. So as I mentioned, we take value-added reselling very seriously. So what are the value adds? Well, we do educational webinars like the one today. I mentioned the complimentary assessments already. We also lead hands-on workshops. Those are both virtual and in person. So look for those on our website at XenTegra.com/events, and you'll be able to see the upcoming schedule of workshops on the different focus technologies. In addition to that, we also put out podcasts. And so if you search XenTegra inside of your favorite podcast app, whether that's Apple or Spotify, you'll be able to find podcasts where we talk about all the different technologies that we focus on. And hopefully we help you think about those technologies differently and what you can do. We love to make the possible. We love to talk about what's happening new. We've got, I think, 80 episodes now focused on Nutanix. So it's a great repository and resource of all sorts of different things. The other thing, we also give away heavily discounted conference passes, sponsored conference passes. Our founder, Andy, wasn't able to go when he was a solutions or a systems administrator. He wasn't able to get funding for conference passes and things like that. So we do this as a give back to all of the hardworking technologists out there. We want to be able to help you go to industry events, get training, and be able to continue to develop and understand the technology you're working with. So if you've never taken advantage of our conference pass program, you can reach out to your sales client exec and they can get you connected, or you can email sales@XenTegra.com. And with that, let's focus on our meat for today. Let's talk about EUC Reimagined. Paul, I have to say, this partnership between Citrix and Nutanix is really cool because it's not one-sided, right? It is a really strong partnership where both companies are contributing to the outcomes for customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll dive for another hour or so about how the two companies work well together and as well with XenTegra. So it's a perfect partnership. Two top of the line products that vendor that work with XenTegra, and we'll show how the two vendors align with you guys.
So let's kick off. We'll level set. We've got a bunch of different people in the room, so let's start with some definitions. What are we talking about when we say EUC, or end user compute? It's a pretty large umbrella term. It's basically all of the products that touch your end users. And so we think of that a lot of times as just virtual desktops, but really it's about the endpoint. It's about the form factor, how the user interacts with that endpoint, along with what they're connecting to, whether that's the applications, the virtual desktop, their server-based computing, or desktop as a service, right? So from a product like Citrix, we can go and connect users to a Windows 11 instance, which would be a virtual desktop. Those map one-to-one, user to VM. You can also do the more traditional way that Citrix started, and that's that server-based computing, where you take and publish applications onto a server, and multiple of the users connect to the same virtual machine, and they get access to the different applications. There's two different modes which EUC can sort of work with a Citrix solution. You can do full desktop delivery, or you can just deliver the app. So no desktop wallpaper, no start bar, no task bar. It's just a seamless sort of use case where it looks like the application is running directly on the user's desktop. And then over time, things have evolved to desktop as a service, right? And so this has really come along with the advent of cloud computing, hyperscalers like AWS and Azure. We've had the call to be able to do platform level hosting, and what that means is just tie into that hyperscale platform from our vendors like Citrix DaaS, Citrix Cloud, and then connect to remote connections in their cloud resources. So no longer inside of just your data center, but now you can deliver resources from any location, any hyperscaler as a service. And so this is a really nice way to flex, and it's a great use case when we start talking to customers about disaster recovery, business continuity. And so it's really opened up additional capabilities where you don't need to invest in hardware or co-location in order to meet your DR and business continuity needs. Now you can actually flex into a hyperscale cloud. And so all of these things are really important to kind of level set and be able to talk about what EUC is. So one of the key components that we talk about with end user compute is virtual desktops, but there are some roadblocks. There's long deployment times often with virtual desktops. You have to make large upfront investments because you need infrastructure to run all of these on in the background. You may have limited scalability because you only invest in X amount of hardware. And we've had more than a few customer engagements where we had unhappy end users because the performance wasn't where users expected. They're comparing it to how Windows runs on their individual desktop at home, or some other user experience like their smartphone. And so some of those performance issues will often make end users unhappy because, again, they're comparing their experience to what they see in the rest of their life. So all of these roadblocks are things that we have additional tools and capabilities to be able to help customers succeed with, because as I mentioned, the scalability problem, perhaps it's an additional cluster sitting in a hyperscale cloud. We can use that sort of capacity to burst. And so our partners over at Nutanix have the ability to base that on the same technology. At the end of the day, Nutanix is just software. And so it can run on hyperscale as well as it can run in your data center. And so you can use the same ways that you do today on-prem in a hyperscale cloud. And that limited scalability becomes less of an issue for you. Back in 2021, the Enterprise Strategy Group did a report looking at all of the things, all of the common roadblocks that are affecting VDI users. 87% of those respondents said they had initially adopted or accelerated EUC implementations due to COVID-19. And that was really common with what we were finding as well. So as we were working with customers all through the COVID-19 early days, it was really critical in being able to get work done because they could quickly spin up VDI instances and then deliver those out securely, regardless of what their end users had as an endpoint. Using Citrix and things like that, we were able to help a lot of customers get back into business because we could do that in a very secure way. You know, you still had to protect users' data, and security. So they needed ways to be productive again. And so a lot of people flexed into VDI solutions. 62% of those companies say that their hosted desktop vendor or solution has not changed as a result of COVID-19. And we found that to be true as well. We had so many customers that we were already engaged in working with, and the answer to the problem of how do I enable remote work was already in their portfolio. They had Citrix deployed, they were already on the path, they had everything ready and published on the internet, so it was ready to go. They just needed to scale up. And so even in the world of all of the supply chain problems and things like that, they were able to be successful because they had this technology in their portfolio. And so that's a huge flex enabler, right? And so the agility of being able to use Citrix to deliver these things, these applications, and to make your end users productive was a huge benefit to 62% of the companies that were interviewed. You know, from a percentages standpoint, I would say on the XenTegra perspective, this seems to be pretty consistent with what we were seeing. We were certainly working with our share of companies to help them as first times on the EUC path, but there were a lot of our existing customers who really didn't change their strategy. I was one of those. I was director of infrastructure for a large insurance company. And you know, we already had Citrix deployed for our offshore use case. We had a lot of business process automation going on with contractors around the world. So it was a key part of ours, our strategy for enabling remote work for people already. And so we were able to flex that up, add a little capacity, move some resources around, and really be able early in the pandemic to be productive again. So one of the things that we love about this strategy is that it is super flexible in the use cases and super flexible in the ways that we really try to make things happen. So all of that said, COVID changed things, and the demands for work, remote work has changed. We see articles every week where people are trying to bring people into the office. We see companies who have permanently said you're working from home. I know my wife is one of those. There won't be a return to work for her, so she is permanently working remote. Citrix is a big part of making that happen in her day-to-day life. So as we discuss this and we look at it, what has changed? What do end users want? Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, just like Philip mentioned during COVID, we've been talking to a lot of customers more and more, right, with the burst of work from home, quick VDI instances to run and manage the infrastructure. What we hear from customers, right, because of COVID and even after COVID, the increase in mobility, you need to be able to access anywhere, be device independent, and roam across your offices. Workspace freedom, flexible configuration, and bring your own device and be really easier to license the model. Suffice to say, right, you guys want to move away from the old rigid infrastructure. Next slide, Philip. With what the customer and the employees need, what's also important for the organization as a whole is security and compliance, right? What happens if your laptop gets stolen, with data lost, your stringent regulations, protection of IT environments, and implementing new infrastructure, right? You need a centralized management, real estate rationalization for lower costs, and business continuity and DR is very important as well. How fast can you, or how much data can you lose, and how fast do you need to be up and running in case of an event? Oh, Philip, you're on mute.
Yeah, I realized that. This is really where the marriage between the infrastructure, the Nutanix side of the house, and Citrix start to come together. The future is really powered by that core infrastructure. To be successful inside of a Citrix deployment or any EUC deployment, you really need a strong foundation. And so that's why today we talk about this close collaboration between Nutanix and Citrix. So what is that future of EUC? It's a mix, right? As I alluded to earlier, it's certainly got an on-prem component. We have customers who aren't able to utilize public cloud, and so they need the flexibility and agility to run cloud-like using integrations and enablement automations of their infrastructure. So operating cloud-like, but in the confines of their own data center. And so this is a big enabling factor when we start to talk about being able to scale, being able to realize that time to value by deploying hundreds of instances of a VDI quickly, being able to update those to keep them secure. As Paul was talking about, security is still paramount. And so a lot of times when we talk about EUC strategy with our customers, a lot of the conversation comes back around to that security conversation. But for customers who aren't cloud adverse, there's probably a cloud component, and not everybody's ready to go to the other end of the spectrum and be all in on cloud, but we're certainly talking to a lot of customers who are. And so, there is a way to meet in the middle, to do things with the best of both worlds, the scale and the OpEx costs of cloud, but also with that same operating style that you have on-prem. And so we'll talk a little more about it as we go through further, but Nutanix cloud clusters may come into play. In a lot of use cases, we find that customers who go native cloud services are often sticker shocked, I would say, with the costs associated with it. And so NC2 or Nutanix cloud clusters in that hybrid world gives you the ability to cost control. So you can run things in the appropriate location, all with the same operational style. So your operations teams don't necessarily have to relearn anything. They're able to continue to use the same Nutanix technology across all three of these use cases. And so that's a huge benefit. So let's talk a little bit about the joint solution. So from a Citrix perspective, we have Citrix Universal Licensing today. That is the predominant way that Citrix customers license and use Citrix virtual apps and desktops, or Citrix DaaS, which is the desktop as a service. All of that has the capability of running the management layer in Citrix Cloud, or you can also run all of the traditional components like your desktop delivery controllers, your director, storefronts, and gateways on-prem. So there's a flexible deployment option that fits your needs. It's not all or nothing. You're not forced into Citrix Cloud, but you certainly do have that enablement with today's Citrix licensing. Citrix as a company went private in March of last year. And so they simplified the number of different software offerings that they have. And so today, universal licensing is the primary way that customers get it. It's not the only way. So if you're working with a partner like XenTegra, we also have cloud service provider licensing. And so in a lot of small to medium business use cases, or in use cases where you need flexibility, like a DR, where you need burst capacity, CSP licensing is an alternative that we can also bring to the table. But in general, Citrix Cloud is just that. It's a management layer, right? It's not the place where your desktops, your VDIs, and your servers actually run. The place where that runs is somewhere in core infrastructure, either yours, partners, or a hyperscalers. And so as we look at that, Nutanix's hybrid multi-cloud strategy of using AOS across all three of those use cases is an incredible value for you, because the same operating style, the same advantages, gives you the choice on the customer side of where you want to go. And it doesn't preclude you from using hyperscaler VDI instances as well. You get the best of both worlds, and you get a lot of choice because Citrix has made the investment together with Nutanix to glue Citrix Cloud, or CVAD on-prem, very closely integrated to the Nutanix infrastructure. So let's talk a little more about that expected outcomes with Nutanix. Paul, I'll throw it to you.
Yep. So just like Philip mentioned, right, Citrix a few years ago did announce that Nutanix is their preferred #1 platform of choice to run Citrix VDI. We reciprocate the same as well, saying Citrix is #1 VDI broker to be housed on Nutanix. You can see here expected outcomes with hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. We can actually burst VDI out into AWS as well. One of the proof points is we had a customer deploying 2,000 Citrix virtual desktops in under 2 hours. So you can work from on-prem, burst out to the cloud. We can work anywhere and run your VDI from any place.
Yeah, what's great about the expected outcomes here is there's flexibility. I think that's the underline of everything you see on this slide, right? You've got simpler interactions, both for your management and for your users, one place to go in order to get everything they need to be productive. They can bring or choose their own device. That's a huge thing that a lot of shops are contending with, is how do we enable users on mobile devices? I know we work with a lot of trucking companies and places that have lots of mobile devices to enable their workforce. And so how do you take a traditional Windows app that's required to do business and then deliver that into the remote field on a device that it was never intended to run on? So, it's great to have flexibility. Now, Paul, here's the $100 million question. Why Nutanix for Citrix as a foundation?
Absolutely. So we started a company 10 plus years, 11 or 12 years ago now. Time definitely flies. But when we started out our company, VDI was kind of our main claim to fame, per se. So if anyone uses VDI before, no matter how fast your SAN is, it's bottlenecked by those two physical controllers. Let's say you have 1,000 VMs or 1,000 servers all trying to log in at once. We call that the bootstorm effect, right? Let's say you try to type something, 10, 20 seconds later, it'll start typing. A little scary, a little bit, right? We eliminated that bootstorm effect by having virtualizing those controllers on every single one of our nodes, hence increasing more I/O, more traffic lanes, more doors into the environment, eliminating that bootstorm effect. So that's how we got the claim to fame with VDI. Worked very well with Citrix, and we've got thousands of customers running VDI and millions of end users. We're just getting better and better. And then our NPS score for that, right, it's been 90 plus for 7-8 years in a row now. So for anyone that's not familiar with NPS score, it's you guys, the customers, rating Nutanix as from -100 to 100. So being at 90 plus for the past 8-7 years is something to behold.
One of the key factors for the seamless experience is the co-development of several of the pieces that are integrated here. One that I always like to talk about, Paul, is data locality, right? You mentioned no matter how fast the user SAN was, it's never the same as having local storage. So how does data locality help customers who choose Nutanix as the foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just take a step back and say you're running a normal software-defined storage, right? Say the VM or VDI lives in server 1, but since it's software-defined, that data could be located in node 3 or 4. Hence, you're gonna have to traverse the network to grab that data. With Nutanix, with data locality, where the VM or VDI resides, the data is going to reside at the same node or server. Quicker, faster retrieval rates, and no longer needing to have to hop through the network. So we give you that faster I/O with that as well.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the integration points. So Citrix Studio is one of the main places. So both on-prem Citrix as well as the Citrix Cloud has a major integration point using Citrix Studio. So Studio, for anybody that touched Citrix in the past, was an MMC plugin, ran in the traditional Windows sort of management construct in a thick client application on a Windows server. But Citrix Cloud has changed that so that Studio is now a web version. And so even the more modern on-prem versions are moving to a web user experience instead of the MMC. And so as part of that change, you're seeing the integration points also established between on-prem and cloud with the Nutanix infrastructure. One of the biggest ones around that is machine creation services. And so there's a plugin that you install. Anybody that's ran Citrix Cloud or installed cloud connectors, you know that you don't see Nutanix by default when you pull down the list of infrastructure to connect to when installing your cloud connectors. Well, that's because we need a plugin. And so Citrix and Nutanix have worked together to co-develop that plugin architecture. You install that onto your Citrix Cloud connector, and then you're able to connect the Nutanix resources directly into Citrix Cloud or to your on-prem Citrix virtual apps and desktop infrastructure. And then from there, you're able to use it like you would any other pool of resources. You're able to choose a golden master image. You're able to create machine catalogs using a snapshot from that master image. And then you're able to configure and manage those deployments, rolling them forward to new updates, updating one golden master image, and then rolling that throughout your entire farm. This is a huge, huge benefit for the operationalization of a technology around VDI. Because if you don't have something like machine creation services or provisioning services, which we'll talk about in just a second, you're forced to manage every one of your VDIs like it was an individual endpoint, like it was a laptop or a desktop. So the Citrix Studio piece of this is really important because that integration point is absolutely necessary to get operational efficiency. Now, from a Citrix Director standpoint, you also need to see in that web user interface, how are your VMs actually performing? There's a wealth of information that Citrix can put in front of the administrators to know where there are problems or help them work trouble tickets when they come in. So VM level performance statistics coming in from AHV, which is Nutanix's KVM-based hypervisor, It's an alternative to vSphere, but from AHV gives your operations teams a huge benefit of knowing how things are working. You can see the IOPS, you can see the bandwidth, and most importantly, you can see the latency and how that's affecting your user session. Because at the end of the day, like I alluded to earlier, the customer's expectation, the user's expectation is that this runs just as well as that Windows laptop I have at home. So that's the gold standard you're always going to be compared against, is a local Windows session. From a provisioning services standpoint, if you're not familiar, provisioning services is Pixie boot. So you boot from the network, you spin up your virtual machines, and then you have an image streamed across the network. And so you can stream those images using a master image on Nutanix. Full support for PVS is there. A lot of the secret sauce and co-development has really been around machine creation services, but they didn't neglect PVS customers. You are a first-party citizen. You get the same features that you expect on any other hypervisor platform. And lastly, Citrix DAS. We talked about this, aka Citrix Cloud. You've got full Prism integration for the combined services. So with that plugin that's been co-authored and developed together, you're able to get integration and one-click deployments on Nutanix infrastructure. So it is a first-party citizen. Now, one of the other things that we haven't talked about is what happens with all of your user data, your user profiles. So there's a solution in the Nutanix portfolio for that, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul to talk about it.
So we're one of the few, if not only, vendor out there that can do all three storage mode within a single cluster. We call it Nutanix Unified Storage. So we can do all three, right? That includes file services, object services, and volume. With file services built into NUS, you can leverage that with your VDI, right? Add Active Directory, user profiles, attach that to the file services. If you have 200 terabytes of files or 300 terabytes of files, we can also do dedicated mode as well as mix, right? Adding files to your general purpose VMs to VDI. But if a large file environment, we do have storage heavy nodes for your file services. For objects, you can use objects for a backup target repository, archive out older data. We do have file analytics or data lens built in to the product that can do auditing, analytics, ransomware protection. With auditing and analytics, we can see data aging, how long that data has been sitting in that filer. Can we archive it, move it off to a less expensive disk, to object storage, or we can even offload it out to AWS or Azure blobs and buckets. But yeah, we do all three modes, right? File, objects, and volume, called Nutanix Unified Storage.
And this is one of the great places that we see the foundation. So no real co-development here. This is part of the standard Nutanix offering, right? But we have to contend with, making sure that when a user logs into Citrix, they have their background, they have their icons, they have their data, most importantly. And so how do you get that to a user? And so we layer on profile management solutions onto regular Windows, but we have to store that data somewhere. And so storing file data on the same cluster is a huge enabler for us, because it also benefits from multiple advantages of the Nutanix platform. One of those is being able to scale out. So a file services cluster starts with 3 virtual machines. If you've got more nodes than that inside of your cluster, you're going to be able to scale up to 5 virtual machines serving files, as many as you've got in the cluster, up to, what's the limit? I think 16 or 32, Paul.
There's no hard limit,
Okay.
but tested, right? I think we're at 64 that we've tested and proven to work. There's nothing in the system that stops you, but yeah, we've proven it to work at 64 nodes per cluster. You
And
get
so
more
that's the
clusters.
important thing, right? You get the hyper-converged performance, you add a node, you get more capacity, and you get more performance by adding a node to your physical Nutanix cluster. You do the same thing with your file services or object services out of the Nutanix cluster. So you can scale those up for higher performance. So there's a couple different ways that file services work. And so one of those is a distributed type of file share, which is perfect use case for profile data. And so we use that with all of our Citrix customers who are Nutanix based. We recommend that they store their profile data there. And the other important thing that Paul talked about earlier is data protection. That's built in as well for all three of these modes. So not only can you do virtual machine data protection, you can do file, object, and volume data protection to other Nutanix clusters. So this will help you in not only delivering first-class VDI, but also business continuity and disaster recovery. So let's take a look here. What does that unified cloud management look like? So you've got your private cloud on-prem. You've also got a hybrid multi-cloud. So a hyperscaler or a service provider, maybe a VAR like XenTegra, also helping you out with hosting. So the same Nutanix cloud platform runs in any of those locations, like we said. You've got your master images. We do data replication between them. We take the user profiles, the desktops and apps, and we can also take network profiles. And we really haven't talked about this, but Nutanix has got the ability to do network extensions, network security. And so you can also add those security elements into your operating to keep things cordoned off, talking only to what they should be talking to. And those network policies are also portable, so they can move across clusters. And then what do? We layer on Citrix DAS. And so we have a Citrix EUC controller that will sit inside the cluster that will connect it to Citrix DAS. The same is true if you're not using DAS. If you're using on-prem, you can also connect these to a centralized set of NetScalers and DDCs, so your farms can talk to one another. But with that unified capability, you're really able to set it and really let it kind of work on autopilot, because all of the pieces of this are really on the front end config. You are able to set up and configure everything at sort of the connection to your Citrix environment, and then you're able to control it through machine catalogs and your snapshots and golden master images. So operationally, it works really great. Now, a lot of the things that I'm talking about have to do with non-persistent VDIs, meaning the data doesn't stay in the VDI, it travels to where the user is. And so a lot of what we do here that makes it magic to the end user is making that data portable, making it move around. But there are certainly still use cases where you want persistent VDIs. Guess what? You can do those too. You can spin them up from master images, and then you never have to update them. You have that flexibility to make the choices that are right for your organization. So let me see if there's anything else here. When we talk about Citrix DAS versus on-prem Citrix, I'm sure you've been through the upgrade cycles. Traditional Citrix, you have releases. There's two different types of releases. There's long-term service releases, and then there's the current service releases. We recommend for production, most customers stay with the long-term service. The difference between them is how long it's supported. Long-term service is supported for 5 years. After the release date, it gets patches and updates. And so for most enterprise customers, it's a great fit because of that long-term support. You don't have to go through the upgrade cycle as often. The current releases come out with new features. That's where they're essentially releasing new capabilities. And man, I was blown away. I looked the other day at all of the new features that Citrix is delivering in current service releases and in the upcoming long-term service release, they're still releasing, it was like 8 or 10 pages of new features. So they're not sitting on their laurels. They're still definitely developing the product, adding new capabilities that you can take advantage of. But to take advantage of those, you have to do the upgrade. One of the core advantages of using Citrix DAS is that it self-patches. Your cloud connectors get their updates from Citrix Cloud. Citrix manages the version, and so you're in a perpetual state of update, and you're always getting all of that for the management layer. You certainly still have the capability, and for places that need more control, maybe you have legacy versions of operating systems. Maybe you have other requirements that don't allow you to be cloud connected. You still have the mode of operation, but again, you own all of the management layer. So you have to lifecycle that, upgrade it, and it can be painful at times. So let's talk about hybrid and multi-cloud EUC with Nutanix clusters. So Paul, do you want to take this one?
Sure, absolutely. Again, the messaging of Nutanix, we've gone a long way from just being an on-prem HCI company. You're going to see when you log into our website, we're more known for now as the multi-cloud hybrid cloud company. What's going to set us apart from other competitors is license portability. So no matter where you put your VDI, either on-prem, AWS, or Azure, with a Nutanix cloud platform, we can move VDI across those public or on-prem cloud. And with license portability, the license will follow that VDI with you. Philip, we go to the next slide.
Absolutely.
Right. So pricing and packaging 2.0, we try to make it a lot easier to license now. So the license package will be EUC, and it will include our AOS and AHV hypervisor. But we're only going to be licensing, right, the number of users. So if you have 50 users, we'll license by 50. If you add 100 more employees by tomorrow, we'll just license you another 100 users. So you can see we can scale and grow very easily. And then with that license portability, no matter if you're running on a 3-node cluster or you have another 6 nodes sitting elsewhere, we'll just move the license with the EUC user. So very, very quick, very seamless, and very easy to license and purchase.
So one question for you there, if we go the per user model, does that help us in disaster recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's the active user, right? If it goes down, we'll set up backup and repository and everything. But once it goes back up, right, you don't have to license it twice. You don't have to license at the main site and then license at the DR site. Just once, just one license.
So I am sending a couple questions, answering a couple questions. If you do have questions, definitely drop them in the Q&A or chat. I'm trying to respond in between chatting or talking. This to me, the per user model and DR is really where it sings, right? The ability to license the user once and then run Nutanix anywhere is a huge, huge enabling factor. It's especially useful for some of our engineering use cases where you've got large graphical GPU-based VDIs that you're trying to deliver, where your VDI needs to be as close to the application and the data as possible for some of these big skyscraper drawings or mega planes or mega ships. Those kind of intensive graphical applications often need a lot of hardware. And the per user model actually gives you a really cost-effective way of spreading that load over adequate amounts of hardware in a different licensing model. So this is a huge, huge enabler when we talk about EUC Reimagined for those kinds of use cases. And then there's one more huge advantage to Nutanix. Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
That's same thing, right? Scaling linear scale, just like normal anything Nutanix wise, with their HCI capability, run out of space, just add more nodes and we'll scale linearly. Very easy to scale, right? Add more nodes, add a top of the rack switch. We'll use IPv6 to auto discover, and it'll just add more nodes, add more resources to your environment. And then we can also scale out, right, with hybrid cloud. We can scale out to AWS and Azure, and then just move the licenses over with license portability. So no matter how small or how big you start out, we'll be able to scale with the user experience.
That's great. And I think the slide's a little bit of a misnomer. So, the small side shows one node sort of on the thing. Most of our beginning clusters are going to be 3 nodes for redundancy, but you can certainly add an additional node as you kind of scale out. So did want to make that call out. That's really it. So at a nutshell, the Nutanix solution offers you scalability, which is huge. It offers you the ability to simplify your operations because it's all controlled from a central management point called Prism. And it also gives you all the necessary integration points with Citrix to be able to scale and handle this with a smaller team, with folks who are used to Citrix, and you don't need to grow your team large to be able to handle the sprawl of many VDIs, many laptops. You can do it with a much smaller team. And then data locality, right? So as Paul said, being able, well, actually, I'll make an analogy here. So we've got another systems architect here at XenTegra. He's also CEO of XenTegra Gov, but my friend Harvey likes to say it like this: if you're going to get hungry, where are you going to go to get food? Where's the fastest place you can go to get food? It's your pantry, right? You don't go get in the car, drive somewhere, and then come back with food. It's faster to go to your pantry. And that's the concept of data locality, right? The data you need to run the VDI is locally inside the server where it's running. That's by virtue of the Nutanix platform. It accelerates everything. So the food's in your pantry at all times. But that doesn't mean that it's created a failure point. If something happens with that particular node, it can go over the network to continue to get it. So all the resiliency and redundancy is built in for you. They thought of a lot. They've thought of almost everything. And so that's why we like to choose this platform as the place you run Citrix. At this point, I think we are near the end. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to be asking and answering some questions. So please throw them in. We've got one from Larry. Paul, can you talk a little bit about price? I know we're both technical guys, so we typically don't talk price, but what's the VDI price model sort of look like?
Yeah, like Philip said, we don't go on the pricing side, but if you look at how we price it now, right? It's pricing and packaging 2.0. We have 5 main bundles that we sell. So you're going to see when we talk to the tax account rep, they'll go over NCI and NCM. However, if you go with just EUC and VDI, that will include everything as well under the sun, right? That'll include your AHV and AOS licenses with your VDI. So you just need to purchase the number of end user and then go with the EUC bundle.
Perfect. So Larry had another question. I've answered that one in chat, but real quickly, I'll recap it. Are there any tools that are integrated in the platform to search for duplicate files and files that haven't been touched for a period of time? They're trying to prevent sprawl. Sorry if it's in the right place to ask the question. It is the exact right place to ask the question. And yeah, that's Nutanix Data Lens. Data Lens does that. It watches the file data inside of Nutanix files, and so it gives you all of those analytics. And it has the added feature that it can help you tier off older data to free up additional space. So you can tier it off to archive, object store in the cloud. If it's truly stale data that never gets accessed, it can go to a true archive tier, or it can go to a cold tier of cloud storage. So there's lots of options for you there. And Kenneth had a question: any integrations with Citrix app layering and Nutanix for the hybrid cloud solution? There's not a direct integration for app layering, but there is some direct integration for Citrix Cloud and Citrix Studio for Flex App from Liquidware, which is very similar to app layering. And those can be served up from Nutanix Files clusters. So it operates a little differently with a Flex App 1. Everything is completely contained into an executable. So it's able to also serve those from file shares on the same cluster. And a couple more questions. Let's see. Several years ago, Citrix said they had Citrix Cloud and didn't. Do they really have their own cloud, or is it in Azure and AWS? So most cloud providers, Citrix included, they're going to leverage the hyperscalers along with some of the other partners, like a company called Equinix. Equinix is often a real estate provider to the hyperscalers like Azure and AWS. So there's going to be some mix of this. And the bigger impact here is that the front end of Citrix Cloud is distributed. It's not in one place. So all of your Citrix gateways, all of your Citrix DAS, they've re-architected it to be a distributed architecture across many, many regions, many, many points of presence. And so that's one of the advantages Citrix Cloud can actually bring to you. Now, that said, I'll ask the question, does Microsoft 365 go down? And the answer is yes. There are always the possibilities of outages, just like if you're self-hosting, Citrix Cloud can have outages as well. It's part of the life that we live, but the distributed nature of how they built the software is really to try and combat those outages and make it higher available than what you're able to do serving it from a single data center on a single IP address, in one location. They're trying to build out an architecture so that you have the redundancy across many locations. Hope that helps. Any other questions? All right, if not, I want to say thank you for attending. I really, really appreciate you spending some time with us. We hope you learned something and took something away. If there's more to follow up, please do reach out to sales@XenTegra.com. We'll be glad to have a deeper conversation. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm InfraPhilip with one L. I still say Twitter, on X. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. Be glad to help in any way that we can. A lot of what we do is advisement. A lot of what we do is discussion and strategy and things like that. So certainly thank you for your time. The giveaways, I'll remind you, if you take a meeting with us down below, there's a form. You will get a quarter zip hoodie. And so we can reach out and answer any questions as part of that meeting. And then workhasnoboundaries.com, our Hawaiian giveaway, our Hawaiian vacation giveaway is certainly available to you. And last but not least, the lucky winners of our 2 solo stoves, we're going to let you know as a follow-up after today's webinar. So look for an email from our XenTegra marketing, and we'll let you know who the lucky winners are. Once again, on behalf of Paul and myself, thanks so much for spending time with us, imagining reimagining EUC. Have a great day.